The eighth house is a place that's difficult to experience or describe. In super ancient perspective, this is the house of death, taxes, at sources that are not yours, but you have access to through a partner or a parent or someone who's close to you. That's the ancient idea. So it has so much to do with what you have no control over.
Hmm.
We do not have control over death or taxes. But if we're looking more at like the modern or contemporary way of looking at this house, because our lives are a little bit more nuanced with the internet and psychology and stuff like that, the eighth house is often talked about as a place of like deep, deep psychological work
Yeah.
or where we experience the psyche. When I talk about the eighth house with someone who's looking for creative advice or creative access, the eighth house is where I'm like, that's where you like go into your loins and it's like bloody and messy and you're like screaming and you're like dancing and it feels very primal. And it's like, you don't want anyone to see you while you're making the art because it's so ooey. Like it's just hard. But it's the primal aspect makes the art so attractive when people
Mhm.
experience it after you've made it. If someone is experiencing you while you're making it, it's deeply uncomfortable for them, which can be cool. Can be cool for some people. And it can be deeply uncomfortable for the creator to be in that mode. But in my experience, when I am in that kind of like from the loins creation, it
Mhm.
has to happen. Otherwise, something unproductive or destructive will happen.
Yeah.
Like I may say something I will regret. Or that going back to your chart specifically, you have Mercury at 12 degrees of Leo, and you have Chiron at 9 degrees of Leo. Chiron is the woundedness asteroid or planet. It's where we will never fully leave that feeling of like rejection.
Mm.
I'm deciding how deep I want to go into this because Chiron's a really important planet for you and all people. But because you work so much in mental health and like in the deep psychological, this makes a lot of sense. Mercury and Chiron, I would say, are twins because they're so close to each other. You are always speaking from a place of Chiron, or you're always thinking about applying your language or your memory, or maybe not memory, your knowledge to healing
Mhm.
or to pain. It's just they're so linked that it makes a lot of sense what you said. And they're directly opposite your Saturn.
Okay, and
So what was that?
what does that mean?
Okay, so when planets are opposite, the best way I can describe it in a very quick way is that when we are pre 30 years old, we have to choose which one to take care of at a time.
Yeah.
So there's always this kind of feeling of like neglect or fixation. You know, it's like, and you're always toggling back and forth. And you usually switch back to one of the planets because you can feel that they're neglected.
Right.
And then you start neglecting the other one. So it's a difficult feeling. After 30, we hopefully get to a place where we can like be more fluid with the toggling. After 60, we are like so good at integration,
Mhm.
right? And like I'm talking too much in age or life cycle. You could be 15 and be integrated. Like I believe that too. Okay. So Mercury, let's just stick with Mercury right now. Mercury opposite Saturn can look like periods of quiet, periods of not speaking at all. It could look like in early development that you had to do things in your own way, that's very Saturn, or in a slow way, which is also very Saturn.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking of like maybe when you were learning language or you're using language, you wanted to be so deliberate that you didn't use language. Or
Wow.
when you use language, it was never precise enough. Like that could be something.
Hmm.
But what's interesting to me from your comment is where they are in your chart, because that eighth house where Mercury is the place of like the deep, dark psyche.
Yeah.
And Saturn's in the place of the body or the material world. And they're at odds. And Saturn has so much to do with like, fear,
Mhm.
loss, fear of losing something.
Yeah. Wow.
There's a dread element to Saturn, but I am a big Saturn stan, and you know that. Your chart ruler is Saturn. As a Capricorn rising, Saturn is your most important planet. So he is your guide. And Saturn's like gifts don't show up until later in life. This is why I say 30 and 60, because that's the Saturn cycle, basically 28, 58,